Mr. Kelly? Here. Mr. Upper? Here. Mr. Smith? Here. Mr. Boda? Here. Mr. Anthony? Here. Solicitor Zadi? Here. Alternate Mr. Burry? Here. Mr. Bevcia? Here.
Only on the right of fifty. Okay. We only have one item on the agenda tonight, and that's the floodplain variance application of Huntley Park. We'll have to swear the witnesses. First of all, I just want to state that this is a floodplain variance application, and the only relevant issues are those that are relevant to whether a variance should be granted from the floodplain ordinance. That does not include discussion of whether the pump station is appropriate, the exact use that the property is being put, the underlying property, easements. I think that's all a matter for consideration by the planning commission and the commissioners which are considering the use. Having said that, I'm going to allow both sides a little bit of leeway in talking about that, because the floodplain variance does say that there has to be some cause for the variance established. And I think like a certain amount of background on the project is necessary for that. But basically, the only thing at issue is the floodplain variance. Okay, having said that, all applicants or persons offering testimony in support of or in opposition to the scheduled public hearing, please stand and be sworn. Anybody who's going to say anything? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth that you shall answer the bar? Take your seat, and then as people come to speak, they should identify themselves. I think everybody who's going to speak has already signed a sign-in sheet. If not, we appreciate your signature. Okay. We're going to hear from the applicant first.
Good evening. My name is Blaine Lucas with the law firm Babs Callen. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Huntley & Huntley Energy Exploration, LLC. Huntley is currently developing a water distribution facility for use in the township and surrounding areas, the purpose of which is to dramatically reduce the need to truck water to its well pads for hydraulic fracturing purposes. The system will first withdraw water from the Youghiogheny River through an intake in the river and through a pump house to be constructed on property owned by the township. The township and Huntley have entered into an easement agreement, and that agreement is included in your application materials. The pump house, which is the focus of this hearing, will then pump the water via pipe to what's called the CO tank pad, about roughly a half mile to the northwest, adjacent to the Plutus well pad, which was previously approved by the Board of Commissioners. It will service Plutus, Apollo, and others. Again, Apollo and Plutus were the wells on those pads were previously approved by the Board of Commissioners. We're going to get into here in a moment the reason for this pump house and part of the larger system that's part of. Basically, it's going to enable Huntley to take on average 5,000 truck loads of water off township roads for every well it drills. There are many components that are needed for this project, approvals from a number of governmental agencies because of the river and other things. This is just one small but very important component of that. Now your township floodplain ordinance ordinance. It requires that any new construction or substantial improvements in the floodplain requires the granting of a variance from the zoning hearing board. There are also some minor deviations from the normal requirements for location of certain equipment in this building that we're requesting relief from. The procedures for those are in part 8 of your floodplain ordinance. And again, I'd like to stress that the variance only relates to the pump house itself. It doesn't relate to the larger part of the system. To move things along.
Where's part 8? I just have like sections.
Chapter of the floodplain ordinance?
Yeah.
Section 800, et cetera.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
There are a couple exhibits that I'd like to note right up front, because it will make things flow a little faster. The first of which I've provided to the members of the board. Have an extra copy for purposes. And what I've marked as Exhibit 1 is the application that you've received previously. What we did is we've added subtabs A, B, C, etc. to that application, and we also have reduced the size of the drawings for the E&S and the stormwater management, just to make it more manageable for the record. Just to identify what you have there, tab A is the cover letter, tab B is the application, tab C is a narrative, and then it addresses how Huntley will address each ordinance requirement. Tab D is a memorandum from our engineering consultants, civil and environmental consultants, CEC. Tab E is a memorandum from McKim and Creed, the company that's designing the pump house building. Tab F are certain drawings, which we'll briefly talk about, C01, S03, and E02. Tab G is the floodplain map for the area. Tab H is the easement and right-of-way agreement that was executed with the township. Tab I is an agent authorization agreement executed by the township authorizing Huntley to present this application to you. And then tab J, in a reduced size fashion, are all the erosion and sedimentation control and permanent construction stormwater management.
Are any of those tabs things that were not in the application previously distributed?
In substance, they're identical. The only thing we've done is we've added the letter tabs just to make it a little easier for everybody to follow along.
Okay.
And we reduced the size of the drawings in tab J, but they're identical. We have 2 other exhibits that I'll just note now so we have them in the record. First is on mark as Exhibit 2. There's a drawing prepared by CEC labeled drawing OV-01, which is an overview of the project as a whole, just so the board understands how this connects to that balance of why we're here tonight. And then lastly, in Exhibit 3, which is just a copy of a rendering of the pump house.
I'm not seeing Exhibit 2 on.
I didn't have that. What I gave you will be Exhibit 2.
Okay, so we can mark Exhibit 2. Okay.
So tonight,
Oh, there's one of these for everybody.
I brought copies for everyone.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I want to make sure the court reporter gets
Somebody's
one.
gonna try to get back and out. I didn't realize that either. Okay. I'm gonna take one, everybody else gets one, and then same with this, yes. There we go. Okay, thank you.
So here with me tonight, we have our representatives of Kim Price with Huntley, who will give a brief overview of the whole system, specifically as it relates to this OV-01 drawing, and explain why this is Secondly, we'll have Ryan Daly from CEC basically walk through the site plan and some of the building plans. And then lastly, we'll have Jonathan Shimko with McKinnon Creed, that's McKimcreed. He'll talk a little bit about the building in more detail and the floodproofing and the like that will take place. Lastly, we do have available for comments and questions, if there are questions that those three individuals can't answer. Brian Dillman, a regulatory advisor with Huntley, to answer any permitting questions, and Scott Kruger, Krueger, from our water group, if there happen to be any questions about how this water system is going to work. So with that, we'd like to start with a brief presentation by Kim Price, just explaining what the pump house is and the cog of the larger system that will benefit everybody by dramatically reducing truck traffic in the township. Kim?
If I may, I didn't sign the form. Would you like me to sign that?
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
To speak?
Yeah. so
You won't need to, you're
Okay.
part of the app. Yeah, no problem.
Is that okay? All right.
that's good. Okay.
Well,
That's our, this one.
all right. Well, thank you. As Blaine mentioned, my name is Kimberly Price. I do communications for Huntley and Huntley Energy Exploration. And I wanted to take some time to go over for you our plans for Elizabeth Township and how this particular facility works into those plans. So we have a total of 15 wells permitted within the township. And those wells are on the Apollo B well pad and also the Plutus well pad. Our 2019 development plans for these locations call for the completion of 3 wells on each of those pads, totaling a total of 6 wells that will be completed this year in 2019. This is going to require a significant amount of equipment and supplies to be mobilized into each of these sites, the greatest of which is going to be the supply of water. The amount of water that's actually needed to complete each of these wells, they're all unconventional Marcellus wells, the amount of water needed to complete each of these is the equivalent of about 5,000 truckloads of water. That's an average. It has always been our intention to try to find a way to pipe water to these sites in order to reduce the truck traffic that would be necessary from hauling this water into each of these locations. So again, that is a piece of why we're here today.
And how many wells did you say there were total?
There are total permitted within Elizabeth Township, each of, combined between these 2 pads, there are 15. In 2019, pardon?
And Kim, just to be clear, there may be a greater number that have been permitted through DEP, but in terms of what Huntley has the permission to drill in the township, those are the 15 that were identified by this price.
Correct. Currently, 2019 plans call for only 6 of those to be drilled in the near future. We do intend to drill them all at some point. So currently, our only source of piped water into these locations is coming from Pennsylvania American Water. This municipal water source is unfortunately not able to provide high enough rates and volumes to conduct what we would consider efficient operations without supplemented water from another source, meaning water that would need to be trucked into these locations from another source. Because of these limitations, our company has considered other sources that can provide higher rates and volumes. And the most feasible of those options is the addition of a freshwater intake facility and a freshwater impoundment located here in Elizabeth Township. As I mentioned, our operations plans include the 3 wells on each the Apollo B and Plutus well pad in 2019. Our calculations actually indicate that completions operations would last over 6 months at these pads if we are only to use this PAWC water source. This actual amount of time is reduced to about 2 months if we're able to secure a freshwater intake facility and impoundment, meaning our community impact by way of our sincere activity on pad locations is going to be reduced by 4 months just this year if we have this opportunity. So right now, I'd like to draw your attention to the map that I think is in front of you, but it's also right over here.
And it's what was also marked as Huntley Exhibit 2.
So what I'm going to do for you is just point out a couple of locations, which you should be able to read on your map, but we have the Apollo B well pad right here. This well pad was our first location approved in the township. And then over here we have our Plutus well pad. This green line indicates the pathway by which our trucks will travel to access each of these sites. They are currently being accessed right now as we are drilling wells currently at Apollo B, and we are currently constructing the Plutus well pad. This orange red line, this is an alternate route that can be utilized based off of the size of loads that need to access the sites. The other things I want to point out on this map include the location of the Glean freshwater withdrawal that we're proposing that is before you tonight. And that is right down here, located along the Youghiogheny River on Elizabeth Township property. And just south, I believe that would be south of the Plutus well pad, you'll see the Cedo tank pad. That is where the water will eventually be piped to for storage purposes from the Cedo, from the Glean freshwater withdrawal. It'll be a small holding location.
Yeah, and if I could, I meant to mention, there are separate conditional use applications on the zoning issues for both the gaming withdrawal facility and the Cedo tank that are currently pending before the township. Last week, the planning commission recommended approval of both of those applications, and a public hearing is scheduled on those two conditional use matters for April 15th.
That's right.
What are the black lines going from the storage tank to the Cedo tank pad?
The black lines going from the, that appear to go up Lifedale Hill, from Glean to Cedo tank pad, the Cedo tank pad are a water line.
To each of them?
That would be a buried water line.
Or maybe underground water lines?
Yes. Yes.
And those water lines are part of the zoning applications.
But to go ahead and go into further detail about a couple of these items, the proposed freshwater intake facility, as I mentioned, it'll be located on township property along the Youghiogheny River. An easement agreement for this purpose was approved by the township on March 4th, earlier this month. The water intake facility is going to take up an above ground footprint of about 640 square feet. The building itself is 20 by 32 square feet in size, which you will hear a little bit more about this evening. It will include an enclosed building that houses 2 electric pumps, and the buried water pipelines that we just talked about will take the water that is pumped out of the river and deliver it to the freshwater impoundment before pumping it to the Apollo B and Plutus well locations. Now, the proposed freshwater impoundment actually was recently suggested for approval from the Planning Commission, as Blaine had mentioned, and that will be located on the Cedo tank pad that received conditional use approval in December. So those projects are in process. These projects, the addition of these projects are going to virtually eliminate the water truck traffic needed in Elizabeth Township, which we think is a great service to the community. We multiply the number of 5,000 truckloads of water by 2 to get the full effect of what that looks like for the community for each well. So if you think about a water truck going into the well pad and then turning around and driving out, we accumulate about 10,000 truck trips per well. For this year, we're looking at a savings of 60,000 trips on Elizabeth Township roads. And then in sum, if we look at the total number of wells that we have planned for, permitted currently in Elizabeth Township, that would be 150,000 truck trips once all of our 15 permitted wells are completed. We also anticipate that this will greatly reduce noise for neighbors and provide, as I mentioned, the operational efficiencies and reduce the amount of time that HEX is actively operating on each site.
But I thought you said it was 5,000 trucks for each well.
It is, yes. So if,
15 wells.
Yes. Now, if that's the number of truckloads of water that need to go into the site, but when we talk about the true experience of one load of water going into the site, it goes in and then it comes out on the same haul route. So we're trying to help illustrate to you the experience of that level of truck traffic.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
About water being delivered to the sites, correct?
Yes,
What about the water that you're taking out of the well?
That will still be trucked.
yes,
Correct.
yes.
So,
Produced water will still need to leave the site through trucks.
through trucks?
Yes.
And so how many trips are those?
That's variable depending on the well. It varies from well to well. But to be completely frank, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question.
So is it comparable to income to outtake?
No, it's not. We take significantly more water into these sites than we do take out. I do know that. Okay,
Just a point of clarification.
Sure.
You mentioned there were 2 pumps?
two pumps in the pump house. That's correct.
If I could, the drawing showed 3, and I didn't even, we were gonna have Mr. Daly explain that a little more, but basically, the drawing showed 3, there were going to be 2 pumps plus 1 backup pump. The backup pump was being eliminated, the design otherwise is not gonna change.
You said it's being eliminated, everyone else, her statement's correct, what you're telling me.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, as I had mentioned, you may know this as community members, but we recently began drilling at the Apollo B well pad, and construction on the Plutus well pad is underway. These sites are going to be ready for completions operations and water in just a couple of months. It's our goal to have the CETO tank and the lean freshwater intake facility operational and fully installed prior to completions operations needing to take place. And this will ensure that this water truck traffic can be kept at a minimum here in the township. If these facilities are not operational, our team will need to secure further plans for trucking water into these sites. So it's necessary that we actually secure all of our township approvals in a timely manner. We're hoping to have all approvals by mid-April so that we can go ahead and move forward with construction and be ready to put this water project into service to service the frac locations at Apollo B and at Plutus. And of course, we do appreciate any feedback from the zoning hearing board while we're here before you this evening.
You're on your map that shows the dark lines, which is the water line.
Yes.
On the bottom of the page, it looks like it exits the picture. Where does it go? Is this line going to stay all in Elizabeth Township, or is it going to go to another municipality?
So,
At the bottom of the map.
Yeah,
see
right-
that line
right down here.
Somewhere, yeah.
so I believe, Ryan, on the G on the map, what does that represent, gathering?
So those lines include all the projects that have been permitted through the township, so that would be the Apollo B to Dominion pipeline. So Hex has a right of way that goes down through there. Right now, there's no water lines planned to extend south. The water line would go from Plutus over to the Apollo B well pad.
The line is showing going south, am I correct?
Yes, and that represents a gas pipeline from the Apollo B, right?
Okay, so it's not a water line.
Correct.
As per previous statements.
The ones over here with the W would be the water line.
I can't see, that's too small.
No, that's,
Sorry, Ben.
These ones are exhibit. These are, okay.
Right. Well, getting back to any future, plans to expand coverage to other areas from this well, this water well.
From the water intake facility, our only plans currently include the Apollo B location and the Plutus location. It would be our desire to be able to use it for other locations if they fit the need in the future, but currently these are the only 2 locations we have in the region, in this part of our footprint, that would make sense.
In going through the information that you've provided with the agreement with the township and showing the easements and so forth, which, I'm not gonna touch on, I didn't see a length of time on the agreement.
There's not currently a length of time listed on the easement. That is something that was brought to our attention last week, and we are working with the township to rectify that.
And, okay, on the same thoughts, this pump station that you're planning to construct down there, is this gonna be a permanent pump station?
For all intents and purposes, it's permanent for the foreseeable future, yes.
So we don't have one, so it's not a temporary measure, just supply water to your well pads?
That is its purpose, yes, but
It's not gonna leave the riverbank.
we're not looking for it to anytime soon.
Can you quantify that a little better?
To clarify for you, the term that we're looking at establishing with the municipality for full disclosure, which was intended to be included in the easement agreement that's before you, was a term of 15 years that is, that we have the right to renew. Does that help?
Another 15 years?
Yes, yes. Does that help clarify for you?
Well, yeah, the agreement looked like it was put together rather quickly, and also the drawing showing the right-of-way easement, showing it's going to need to be recorded as such. Am I correct?
It will be recorded.
With meets and bounds, I mean, there's no actual, I mean, what you've shown there, is that the location was not getting at, is that where you're gonna put it?
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to the restoration plans that you might have?
We'll actually be able to, I'm not sure if that's going to be covered here this evening, but I think that there is a section in our, in the easement agreement that does cover restoration.
And basically, the way that the document speaks for itself, but for the moment, there's not a defined end term, but it can stay in effect as long as company's paying the monthly payment. And if company ceases doing that, there's an obligation to remove the facility and restore the site. That is covered by the agreement.
Are there any further questions I can help with?
If I understand this correctly, this pumping station structure is going to be above the floodplain? It's not the foundation, I'm talking about the actual building where the pumps are, the motors.
It's above the floodway. It is not above the floodplain. It's partially above the floodplain. Mr. Daly is going to walk through that in greater detail.
We hope that this helps provide a high-level summary for you, and I'll be here if you have further questions.
At this point, if there are no further questions, we'd like to call Mr. Ryan Daly. Ryan, if you could just briefly summarize your educational and employment background.
Yes, I'm a graduate of Pennsylvania State University, Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Been working for civil and environmental consultants since I graduated about 6 years ago. During that time, I've had a variety of oil and gas experience, both well pads, pipelines, water lines. Currently a project manager and a licensed professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania.
Do you have a minor in watersheds and water resources also?
Yes, that's correct.
And generally speaking, what is your job function as a project engineer?
So as a project manager, I coordinate with our clients, one of our clients being Huntley & Huntley. I oversee staff engineers, preparing calculations and plans for our various projects. I also have a lot of interaction with the state agencies like the DEP, Fish and Boat Commission, DCNR, those sorts of agencies.
Now, I previously identified Exhibit 1 as the application was submitted to the township. All hearing that.
Yes.
Could you coordinate the assembly and filing of that on behalf of Huntley and Huntley?
Yes, I did.
And with the exception of the change in the number of pumps from 3 to 2, is it your testimony that that application is true and accurate?
Yes.
If we could now, maybe to walk through in just a little more detail, the project overview and just kind of break down the various components of the system, particularly from the river through the pump house. We could start maybe with what was one of the exhibits in the, as part of Exhibit 1, the drawings C01 and S03, and those for the benefit of the board, those are included in tab F of Exhibit number 1.
Yeah, so this exhibit, C01, basically is a plan view and cross-section of the intake and the pump station. You'll notice on the right-hand side of the page would be the Youghiogheny River, showing the intake structure, which is located approximately there, down here in the cross-section. That intake structure will be a half barrel with an aquatic screen on it. Water will drop down through that intake structure and then flow back through this intake pipe, which is going to be a 20-inch diameter HDPE pipe.
What kind of pipe did you say?
HDPE, 20-inch diameter. HDPE. It stands for high density polyethylene pipe.
Now, as it relates to the withdrawal point in the river, now there will be buoys and signage at the point of that withdrawal point, is that correct?
That's correct. And so CEC prepared an AIDS navigation plan, which gets submitted to the PA Fish and Boat Commission. And because the Fish and Boat Commission shares jurisdiction of this river with the U.S. Coast Guard, that plan will also be reviewed by the Coast Guard once the Fish and Boat Commission has approved it. As part of their review, they will require warning buoys to be installed above this structure, both during construction. So there'll be additional temporary buoys installed during construction, and then permanent buoys and warning signs.
Your change from your design is from a 3-pump to a 2-pump, begs the question of why. Just curious.
So Blaine touched on it, and Jonathan Bray explained a little more, but the initial design was to have 2 pumps operational with a third one as backup. As part of the value engineering, when they were going through this, they decided to have a backup pump sitting there, probably never being used, probably isn't worth the upfront cost. So
Surely value engineering basis and not functional.
correct.
Now, you mentioned the Coast Guard and the Fish and Boat Commission. DEP also has to approve the intake point too, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the DEP reviews the intake structure and its location within the river.
How about the Army Corps?
So I believe, and Brian could probably explain a little better, but the Army, in this situation, the Army Corps has granted the DEP the ability to issue a permit on their behalf for this. So it doesn't need to go directly through the Army Corps.
So, just kind of moving on now, the pipe will then come back inland, and what's the elevation change as it relates to that?
So I believe if you look closely, the bottom of the intake structure beneath the river is approximate elevation 727.25. So that would be down here. That pipe is actually sloped backwards towards the wet well. So when it gets back below the pump house, It's at approximate elevation 725, so it's about 2.25 feet of drop along that pipe.
Okay, so then, moving into the pump house then, and again,
What's the pool level of the
So the normal pool level, is shown on this figure as well, is approximate 735.4 feet.
This is about 10 feet deeper than that.
So that'll be the bottom of the intake structure, where it flows into the intake pipe. That'll be approximately 10 feet. The half barrel aquatic screen that'll sit on the bottom is about 4 to 5 feet below normal pool.
so, Mr. Shimko will talk a little bit more about waterproofing and other construction practices within the building, just in terms of how the pump house functions. Can you kind of walk through, okay, the water will flow by gravity back to the bottom of the wet well, what happens at that point?
Right, and so because of the nature of this wet well and like Blaine said, the gravity flow, the water within the wet well will be at a constant elevation with the river. So as the river rises, the water in the wet well rises. As the river drops, the water in the wet well drops with it. In order to get that water into their system, they'll have pumps or motors located up on the floor of the pump house. There'll be a long shaft that goes down to a pump structure at the bottom, and that will actually push the water up through there and out through their system.
Now, I know the concern has been expressed in other meetings, that what happens if there's a drought situation and the level of the yacht drops? How does the facility account for that?
Right, so one of the requirements of HEX's water management plan is they have to ensure that a certain amount of water flows through the docks, so they're not allowed to withdraw during extremely low flow events.
You mentioned a water management plan, what's that?
So that's a plan approved by the DEP that basically gives HEX, or I guess that states where HEX will be obtaining their water from and grants them an allowable amount that they're allowed to use from that source.
Now, there's a separate permit for the actual intake, but the DEP's approved the water management plan that has the withdrawal coming out of the river here, right?
That's correct.
Two questions, if I may. You have a clean out for that line also, don't you, freshwater clean out for your screen?
Yes, and so actually, I'm not sure if it's shown on this figure, but there'll actually be a 2-inch air line that will be connected to the side of that intake pipe. And so if that screen ever gets clogged with, you guys know it flows down the river, they'll be able to put a burst of air through there, and then it'll blow any debris off of the screen.
Do you ever see any other instances where you might add fresh water to your well, other than river water?
No, I wouldn't see that. No.
So, how does the system count if you get below a certain level, the river drops below a certain level? How does the pump house account for that?
Right, so this line right here on the figure represents the low water shutoff. So there'll be an automatic sensor located at approximate elevation 733 that if the river level ever drops that low and subsequently the water in the wet well drops that low, it'll shut the pumps off to prevent HEX from being able to withdraw any more water until.
Probably to stop your pumps from cavitating, is that what you're concerned about at that point?
No, so that's in accordance with their water management plan. Whenever the river drops to that certain level, they won't be allowed to withdraw water, so it'll automatically shut off.
Now, what about the reverse of that situation? What if the water rises substantially above where it is today, for example?
Right, so in the event of a high water situation where they wouldn't want their motors to be running if they were ever being inundated with water, there's also a high water shutoff that'll do the exact same thing. Whenever the water in the river reaches that elevation, I believe approximately 748, if I remember correctly, the pumps will shut down as well.
And what's the approximate elevation of, when we say the pumps, that really you're shutting off the motors on top?
That's correct, yeah, the motors.
And what's the approximate elevation of the motors themselves?
So the floor of the pump house is approximate elevation 755, and the motors will be mounted above that, so, you know, somewhere around 757.
So basically about 9 feet below the location of the motors, if the water raises up to that level, it will shut off the motors.
Correct.
Okay.
What protection do you have for in the event of the direction you're talking right now, if it continues to flood? What would keep the water from going up in the bottom of the pump house?
Nothing, and Jonathan can elaborate on that, but the pump house itself is designed to flood. That's part of the flood proofing of the house, is it's designed to flood.
Yeah, Mr. Shipno will address those issues in more
So if I'm
detail.
reading your drawing right, you probably want to talk to the same drawing, I guess. And the pumps are at what elevation?
Around 757.
757.
That's right, yeah, the motors, sorry. Yeah, the pumps will actually be located down in the wet well. They'll be driven by a long vertical shaft coming from the motors.
So let's talk a little bit about the building itself then. The exhibit 3 is a rendering of the building, correct?
That's correct.
And what's the size of the building?
It's 20 feet wide by 32 feet long.
And so it's 640 square feet,
That's correct.
the footprint.
Correct.
And what's the height of the building?
So it has a sloped roof. At the highest peak, it's approximately 14 feet high.
Going back to C01 for a moment, excuse me, yeah, C01, at the top of the drawing, can you point out where the motors are for the pumps?
Yeah, so the motors for the pumps would be located at this end of the building, directly above the wet well. As we mentioned earlier, there were currently 3 shown on the application. However, only 2 are intended to be installed.
You have backup power in there,
Excuse me?
or you can have backup power?
Nothing, no permanent backup power, there'll be a manual transfer switch that allows for use of backup power if needed, but it's not, there will not be a standby generator, or diesel backup.
Generally speaking, what are the construction materials of the building?
Yeah, so it'll be a concrete footer with a split block, or a split face CMU block wall exterior. It's very, decorative feature when you're talking about the CMU building. The roof would be corrugated steel with a rubber coating.
Now, the power's going to come in on the upper level to the motors, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a mechanism to shut off that power, in addition to the pumps turning off? Is there a mechanism, will there be a mechanism in place to shut off the electricity if there's a flood event that rises that high up?
So you will have your standard, circuitry like you would in any building. West Penn Power is going to be providing a dedicated circuit to this facility. So if there was ever an event where the water would short the electric out, it would trip the West Penn fuse, and all power to this building would be shut off.
Is there any monitoring of this from you folks?
I mean, during operations, we'll likely have daily visits to check on equipment, everything.
Alarms tell you that the water's getting into a dangerous situation. You had that alarm up, so.
Yeah, they'll be high in the level alarms with call-outs.
Before you need West Bend.
Correct,
West Bend's kind of a backup to what your design would be, am I correct?
correct, that is correct.
Just in terms of, I know there's some concerns about lighting and noise generation outside the building. Those are going to be more extensively addressed in the conditional use application. But what is the outdoor lighting that's going to exist on the building?
Right, so on your rendering, you can see there's a little wall-mounted light to the upper left corner of the entrance doors. This would be similar to what you would see on a residential garage or porch light. It's just basically gonna be a low access light for them.
And then with respect to sound, roughly, it depends on the ambient measurements, but basically, there's a maximum noise generation level, which is obviously more of a concern during drilling. It's approximately 60 decibels, depending on what the ambient level is. Is that correct?
Right.
And that's at the property line, or at the nearest structure or house off the property.
Yeah, right.
And Huntley commissioned a company called Acoustical Control to do an analysis of what the sound generation would be from the two pumps, if not.
Yes.
And what was their analysis?
Yeah, so they performed an ambient survey out here as well as a sound impact assessment. And as part of their sound impact assessment, they determined that the maximum decibel level from the pumps running within the building would be about 30 decibels at the nearest receptor, which is well below the ambient and the allowable.
So your design has both pumps running simultaneously? That's what the model was.
Yes.
So, just a couple follow-up points. Let's talk a little bit about the construction of the facility and then its operation, just in terms of time frames. What's the anticipated construction time period for everything down here?
So for all the intake structure and the pump station, we're hoping for about 2 months construction timeline, is what we're looking at right now.
Now, there's a picnic pavilion in the park, is that correct?
That's correct.
And will this construction impact that?
No, that'll remain open and accessible the whole time.
Now, again, this is not part of this application, but there's going to be a pipe going from the pump house up to the CETA tank pad, correct?
Yes.
And the plan is to have that traverse under the Great Allegheny Passage Trail, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Before you go, could you stick with the pump house for just a minute? How is that going to be anchored? You want to give me any comments on that at this point, or would you rather wait till later? How would you?
Jonathan can speak to that, yeah.
So, what kind of safety protocols will be in place when that construction takes place across the trail? And I'd like to point out that there are probably 10 approvals that Huntley has to obtain for this project. Some from the township, some from other entities. One of those pending approvals will be for the license across the trail.
Before you get there, isn't there a sanitary sewer line runs down there somewhere?
There is actually just to the, I believe it'd be to the west of this building. We surveyed the nearest manhole and it's significantly deeper than our water line would be, so we'll be over top of it, correct?
How long do they have maintenance for that?
That would be part of, I think, the right-of-way agreement with Huntley, as you know, standard for any utility crossings.
The approximate depth at the trail will be what, of the pipe?
So obviously, you know, water line, they prefer to get it below frost line. So I think top of pipe minimum of 4 feet deep. The trail requirement is a minimum of 3 feet within their right of way, so it'll be deeper than that.
Now, just once the facility is up and operational, is this something that's operating constantly or only at limited periods of time?
So it'll only be operating while Hex is fracking their wells. And, you know, as pointed out before, each well can take anywhere from, 1 to 2 weeks to complete, but once their fracking operations are done, the pumps won't be running.
Could you take that thought process a little longer? Doing it a little further, if you would. How many hours a day do you expect that those pumps to be running?
I would say
They'll be running 24 hours a day when we're doing our completion activity.
And is there some point in time when your holding tank is full and the pumps are shut down?
Then we would shut down, yes.
And what's the duration of that?
That duration would be until we would start our completion activities and stuff, where we would start using our stored water off the
So
sealed
when it's
tank.
being fracked, you'd be pumping 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Correct, if we're continually fracking, it'd be 24 hours a day pumping into it.
For the original holding tank.
Definitely right.
I don't have any further questions for Mr. Daly, if the board does. And again, if they're more appropriately answered by Mr. Shinto, we'll defer to him.
Yes, I do.
that's what we were discussing earlier. We unintentionally left a term off of the agreement, and we are going to be amending that to a 15-year term that is renewable after those 15 years. So it's acknowledged by HEX and also by the Board of Commissioners at this time that that is not in the agreement, but we're working to remedy that. And full disclosure, that is that's the current revised language that we're working with, a term of 15 years that is renewable.
And then why did they approve and sign it? And redo it?
Sir, actually, I don't think that that's a topic for this evening, but if I
Whoa. Yes, it is.
That's, these are legitimate questions, but they're really more appropriate for commissioners.
I'm happy to explain as best I can, is what I'm trying to say.
Let her answer this one.
Correct. So the agreement that you're seeing before you, there were several renditions of it. And at some point when we finalized the agreement, we realized that that was not in there. And that was acknowledged last week at the Planning Commission. And we've since been in contact with the board solicitor to remedy that matter. So as I mentioned, full disclosure, the term that we're working on is the 15-year term.
What was my name?
The term of the agreement, it wasn't clearly stated, yes.
Yeah, you said that.
Yes.
Right now, there's not a defined term,
Right.
as long as something pays
Right.
the monthly payment. The intention is, as Frank indicated, is to refine that in conjunction with the commissioners, set a defined term of 15 years plus a 15-year option.
For Mr. Daly, please. I look at your plan, exhibit 1, and please explain to me how you're going to access your facility from the township streets. How you're going to get from here to there.
Yes, so if you're familiar with the park, there's an existing driveway that goes past the pavilion. So the access to that pump station will be off of that.
The reason why I asked that question is I don't see an easement from that street. Right now, you don't have a legal document to get from there to construct out. And in addition to that, you have electrical service that has to go from that street over to the pump station. I don't see that.
So actually, the current situation with West Penn Power is to bring electric down the water right away from Blythedale Road.
But you said you're going to occupy, the park property. You said we're not going to disturb the pavilion. But if you use the park property, consider it we're not going to disturb the pavilion.
So we'll be accessing past the pavilion, correct?
Correct. In addition to that,
But all, I guess, to clarify for the residents, all the construction equipment and materials will be within the limits, within the permit boundary shown on these plans, which is past the pavilion.
in addition to that, when I look at your plans from the top of the river elevation to the bottom of the pipe, are approximately 10 feet deep. Okay, with your pipe.
Right.
And to go to 14 feet by 14 feet deep well in the river. For your intake to the river. Okay, so about that, you said somewhere here, it's 200 square feet, so I figured it's 14 feet by 14 feet, gives you 196 square feet.
I think that would be the actual wet well. That won't be within the river. That'll be on the land side. So
Okay, on that land side, it's 27 feet deep.
yes,
And now you're 50 feet out the river.
yes,
Okay, how are you gonna build this into the Alpegany River and also on our property here?
right. So Jonathan can touch to that in more detail because
The reason why I ask is I don't see any causeway, and I don't see any shoring, I don't see any baskets in it. You can actually go in and pump it out the buildings.
right.
In addition to that, I don't see any protective fencing, the yellow protective fencing, protect the people on the trail. In addition to that,
Let me follow up with a question similar where you said, I don't know that it's within the purview of this board tonight, but I assume you're going to be working with the board of commissioners relative to the access to that area, since that is a recreational area,
Yes,
and not only for your construction, but also for your mobile operation access.
right.
So I think that probably would be something
in our view, that's a site plan issue that may certainly come
Just
up.
curious question about it, maybe something we want to address, but as I say, I don't think it falls within, personally, I don't think it falls within the purview of this board.
Right. Board have any additional questions for, again, there are a number here that were raised, I think Mr. Schimpf will be able to answer.
Yes.
I'd ask you to cross.
At this point, I understand a letter was submitted by Attorney Berkovich on behalf of Elizabeth, Protect, an entity called Protect Elizabeth. We would like to inquire as to what standing they have, and specifically, if they could identify which members they contend are impacted about this.
Who did they send the letter to? Where's the letter?
We
I
understand,
have it.
it went to your solicitor.
I have, yeah, it just says, it's notice of intent to participate. It says that on behalf of Protect Elizabeth Township, Mr. Berkovich is writing, stating that he would like to participate as the objector party at the public hearings relating to the variance. Protect Elizabeth Township would like to appear as a party to the hearing scheduled for this date and future date in order to cross-examine the applicant's witness as well as present correct testimony. By the way, now that we're on this issue, it's my understanding that Mr. Snelson has been collecting applications to be parties. Is that correct?
I have a form if anybody wants to see party status.
How many people?
None that it would be up to the.
Oh, I see.
The board to mention, I just have a form, so
I see.
I can make sure that anyone that is granted party status, if for some reason a future hearing decision, that they can get their proper notifications.
Okay, we'll let Mr. Berkovich address now.
So my point is that under applicable case law, and I can cite it here, for Protect Elizabeth to have legal standing, not to comment in the public section, the back end of this hearing, we're not questioning whether people do that. It's whether someone has the right as a party, have a lawyer examining witnesses, cross-examining witnesses, presenting witnesses, and to do that under Pennsylvania law, as I'm sure your solicitor can tell you, is a party has to have what's called standing, which means they have to show that they're being impacted by the application. And if you have an organization can only have standing if they have an individual member who has standing. So my question for Mr. Berkovich is, who is the individual and where do they reside? Because until we do that, we don't know whether they have standing or
I
not.
have a question. Should we continue with the presentations before we have that discussion? I'm afraid of breaking the continuity here, some of the questions we
Well,
get.
it's my understanding that we're at pause in the presentation anyway.
But we've got questions that are pertaining to further discussions, that these are presentations these folks are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to defer that question while we present Mr. Shimko's testimony and revisit that, that's
It's
fine.
only for
Do you have any
continuity.
objection to that?
I will be calling previous witnesses for questions, so if that's all right now.
Okay, let's do that and then we'll come back to this.
Yeah, I just like to get the whole story so we
Right.
understand it
That's fine.
before we.
If I could just say
Like picking it apart.
one thing to the board, brought to my attention. You could try to speak in the microphone, people are saying exactly, can't hear.
Okay. How is it going at that distance? Is that okay?
If I can just say one more thing for the record.
Yes.
And this isn't with calling witnesses or any objections, just as a procedural note that we want to put on the record. Our reading of the ordinance is that this hearing today and this permit application for a variance is putting the cart before the horse. Under Elizabeth Township's ordinances, chapter 8, section 8, it outlines a procedure for applying for this variance, but at the very beginning, it says this procedure is triggered in accordance with section 311, which says any party seeking a variance for a floodplain area has to submit their permit and receive a response from the floodplain administrator. And my understanding is that hasn't happened. This is the first procedural appearance of this application for a zoning variance. And so it's our position that this hearing should not be happening at this point in time. That first, there needs to be, under the ordinance, and under the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code, first, there needs to be a review and a denial or no denial by the floodplain administrator before a variance hearing is scheduled before this board.
It says any person aggrieved by any action or decision of the floodplain administrator concerning the administration of the provisions of this chapter may appeal to the zoning hearing board. You're saying that contemplates that there's an application before the floodplain administrator.
I don't think that's what the ordinance says. I would just comment that Huntley was advised to file this, by the township representative, to file this application and get the variance first. I would comment, having done land use law for several decades now, that there's no requirement that an applicant submit an application, get denied, then request a variance. If you know you need a variance, which the ordinance is very clear on, you can certainly seek that variance first.
I would just also point out 302 and 303. A permit shall be required before any construction or development is undertaken. 303, the floodplain administrator shall issue a permit only after it's been determined that the proposed work to be undertaken will be in conformance with the requirements of this and all other applicable codes and ordinances. And then, prior to the issuance of any permit, the floodplain administrator shall review the application for the permit to determine if all the other necessary government permits have been obtained, not applied for, obtained.
What section is that?
I'm sorry? This is 303 sub part 2, paragraph 2.
None of that's-
Only at, well, this is coming from town commissioner's advice. That would be our position.
None of the sections that have been recited by Mr. Berkowitz say you have to apply for, get denied, waste your time applying for being denied for a permit, then apply for a variance application. I'm sure that this board has had non-floodplain issues where people come in for variances all the time, and there's nothing that the council has read that suggests that the protocol any different.
That may be, but we're not governed by non-flood
That's
variances,
exactly
we're governed by chapter 8. Chapter 8, part 8, variance procedures. Requests for variances shall be considered by the township of Elizabeth in accordance with the procedures contained in section 311.
I still haven't heard a sentence read that says you have to apply for, be denied the permit, then apply for a variance.
I think the board understands the argument pretty well. We certainly have taken note of it, both sides.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I guess that next we'd like to have Mr. Shimko walk through in a little more detail the flood proofing and how some of those aspects are going to work. And certainly, I've forgotten some of the questions the board raised, so I'm sure you have it, so please chime right back in. So Jonathan, if you could just provide a little bit of your background and a little bit of background on the company that you work for.
Sure. My name is Jonathan Shimko. I am a senior project manager at McKim & Creed. McKim & Creed is a design engineer firm headquartered in Raleigh. We have an office in Pittsburgh, about 50 people located here in Pittsburgh that do design, build, engineering, design services. As I said, I'm the senior project manager responsible for management of the multiple discipline engineering staff and designers for projects such as this. I've done accounting with McKim & Creed for just under a year. Prior to that, I worked for Tetra Tech doing similar type of work with water and wastewater projects, mostly associated with the energy sector.
And your educational degree?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Science.
And some of the work you've done in the oil and gas industry, has that involved working in floodplain areas?
I have done a couple projects very similar to this in some other townships that include design and withdrawal water from waters of the state.
And compared with CEC's role, what's the role of McKim & Creed on this project?
We are the design builder of this facility, providing the engineering services, design services, and will likely be providing construction services.
And if we could, you had provided, your company provided a memorandum as part of the application package, is that right?
That's right, I believe it was tab E.
Okay. Just if you could hit the high points in terms of what the goals are of your design, how you implement that design and the like.
Sure. The memo sort of states this, but our goal is to design this facility in accordance with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers floodproofing guidelines, as well as the International Building Code for facilities such as this that are utilized to withdraw water, to make sure that we are withstanding the pressures, velocities, and impacts associated with flood forces.
And now the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer guidelines, they're cross-referenced in the township floodplain, which is correct?
Correct. So some main points there is one would be drainage. We're going to maintain positive drainage away from the facility. We're structurally going to be floodproofing the facility, employing a combination of wet floodproofing, which is actually to welcome water into the facility to prevent buoyant forces associated with uplift of flooding.
There's a question about the foundation in place.
Sure.
Elaborate on that in more detail.
I'll touch on it briefly. There's essentially two elements. So there's the wet well, which goes down to depth that we talked about, where the water will essentially be stored beneath the structure. That'll be a precast structure that'll be brought in segments that is designed by a subcontractor. We have professionally licensed drawings in hand already for structural calculations for the precast. Yep, for those depths and those facilities. In addition to just the vertical shaft, there will be an anti-flotation collar installed at the base of that.
For the court reporters benefit, we may talk just slightly slower.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, so there'll be an anti-flotation collar that will be installed as part of construction that will also provide soil pressure to prevent uplift, in addition to the buoyant forces, the fact of the hydrostatic pressure within the wet well as water rises and falls within. The building itself then will be integral to that wet well. It has spread footings that have been designed also by McKimmon Creed structural engineer, licensed engineer in Pennsylvania, with spread footings that will also be doweled in, I believe, with a number 5 rebar into that structure as well to anchor and make them integral.
So you use the wet well also as part of your infrastructure?
That's right. It'll ultimately be integral, even though there's going to be some parts that are cast in place and some parts that'll be are precast and cast in place, as well as concrete masonry unit.
And that means all the IBC unit?
Yes, sir.
And those designs, the aim is to prevent flotation, collapse, or lateral movement of the structure, correct?
That is correct.
What about,
While you're on that subject, if I may,
Okay.
can you give me the exit to the path? You've got an anchor with the wet well, water coming up into the building, exit.
The water?
If you could say a few words, yeah.
Yeah, just add briefly, so water will enter through that 20-inch pipe. Pardon me.
Not the normal, I'm talking about the flooding.
Yeah, so normal water entry will be through that 20-inch pipe. That pipe has a area a little over 200 square inches, which per floodproofing requirements is 1 inch per square, one square inch per square foot of surface area. The surface area of our wet well is that 200 feet, 20 by 10, and so that will allow free passage of water into and up to the structure. There is a hatch within the floor of the building itself that would allow that water to come up into the building as well.
And how does that hatch inactivate?
It's just a gravity hatch.
Pressure gets it in?
Yep, exactly.
And where is that located on?
Let's see, so that hatch is located right here on the, I guess it would be east side of the building, right here.
Single hatch?
Single hatch, yeah, 36 by 36.
And then the doors or the vents on the side of the building?
No, the first point of water ingress would be through that hatch. And then both double set of doors that are shown, those are hollow core steel doors.
Okay, how about the vent on the side of the building?
There is gravity louvers. If water ultimately got up there, which would be much above the hatch, water could enter the louvers. Yes, sir.
Where's the base elevation? Base flood elevation on the building?
Base flood elevation, if I recall, is 764.
Do you indicate that on?
Go back. How do we go back? Back a slide over the top.
First page. First line.
Yeah, it would be, no, CO1, CO1.
It's the same document, it's the first page. Yeah.
Yeah, so on the profile, base flood elevation is at 761, this line's 764, so base flood elevation, and this roof is a little bit below with the exaggeration. I don't think it made it onto the scale, but elevation would be about 3/4 of the way up the wall. Look,
Does your design envision any emergency access to this building for flooding or anything like that?
as far for personnel,
Whatever you had to get into.
not at that elevation.
So you don't envision ever having to access this building other than the normal access that you have right now?
That is
Exactly.
accurate.
For that walkway up front to the steps.
Yes, that is how it is.
That's your emergency access.
Don't talk over each other, please.
Yes, there is one mode of ingress and egress for this facility.
Have you received the letter from KLH's March 26th letter relative to their comments on your design?
Yes, we got it yesterday. I think,
Can you elaborate a little, too early maybe to elaborate a little bit on that, what that means for the board? What your actions will be relative to that?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you need to read the statement of that letter? or-
yeah, go ahead. I mean, Mr. Shipko and Mr. Daly have consulted on this, so, John, if you could, if Ryan needs to chime in on this, that would be fine, but if you could walk through your analysis on this.
Yeah, so essentially, I believe that document states that the application was complete, and there was a recommendation about a NEMA rating, which is a NEMA 6P rated electrical cabinetry. And so we have conferred on this and talking with KLH a little bit about that recommendation. And those cabinets are rated for partial inundation, not frequent, not permanent inundation with water, but infrequent submersion in the event of a flood event. And typically those cabinets are installed for pump stations like sanitary sewer applications where you're talking about necessary infrastructure that should continue to operate even with inundation so that, provide public health.
So the difference is that this facility is not intended to operate if there were a flood event of that magnitude. Now, do the Army Corps regulations have classifications that explain that? If you could elaborate on that, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, so this facility, as mentioned, would not operate, Mr. Daly mentioned, that we are going to have safeguards that this shuts down at a certain level prior to flooding to shut this facility down. It is not meant to operate under flood conditions, and it would be shut down. And therefore, I believe there's a couple of clauses that state that a facility that is not meant to function under flood conditions has some exemptions.
Well, and what are the classifications that exist under the Army Corps floodproofing
Yeah,
requirements?
so they outline W1, 2, 3, and 4 as floodproofing protocols. 1 and 2 are dry floodproofing, which are typically used for residential structures to prevent essentially water into dry proof as opposed to wet proofing, which W3 and 4 are wet proofing procedures where you, as mentioned, kind of welcome water and you use water as a mechanism to present buoyant forces. W3 has some man-made clauses there that requires human intervention to allow that. W4, as this facility is, that happens automatically. There's no human intervention is required to enact a floodproofing measure.
I want to put words in your mouth. The way I understand what you're telling me is you basically have this equipment, electrical equipment designed to withstand water, not permanently, but in the event of a short period of flood. The equipment that wouldn't be designed, it would meet the NEMA requirements, but it wouldn't be damaged. Basically what you're saying.
So what I'm saying is we are not proposing to use NEMA 6P equipment. Our equipment will not be in operation during flood conditions.
Okay.
At this
So you do have work to do with KLA, with the engineering, that's basically what we're saying for this evening.
Yeah, we're happy to have that conversation, with them.
It's an open issue to be resolved yet. It's a comment from the engineer.
It's a comment from the engineer, but I guess the first point I wanted to make is that if you look at the Army Corps regulations, this is classified as a W4, correct?
Correct.
And those same regulations, because it's anticipated that this would allow the flood, don't require electrical and mechanical motors to be above the base flood elevation if the intention is that they're not going to operate during a flood, like as Mr. Shinko pointed out, in contrast, for example, with a sewer pump station.
Outside of this board, that you would be working with the town engineer to resolve this.
So yes, and the equipment that we plan to install will be allowed, it can be flooded, it will not be damaged. Once it dries out, it would still function again. It just would not be rated to, have current running through it under inundation.
And as Huntley understand, acknowledge that any risk of damage is on them.
That's correct.
Again, it's okay.
Thank you.
I think we probably, just briefly, the floor, walls, and ceilings, what kind of materials and devices will be included?
So all materials here will be designed in such a manner that they would not be destroyed in a flood. It's all going to be concrete masonry units, concrete floors, and steel.
It begs a question of this, if you've got the water coming in through your wet well into your building, it has to go back out of your building, that's a fact, is it not?
That is correct. It would actually
How
say
would you
that.
address any contaminants that might come out of your building relative to that?
We are not planning to store any chemicals or.
Coatings, you're going on the coatings approach.
Any coatings would be epoxy based, and we would have very few. Most of it would be the sealants and epoxy based coatings to just protect finishes.
Okay, so you don't see any contamination going back into the roof?
That's-
We've looked at that.
We haven't detailed everything out, but everything that we plan to use would be inert and would limit any exposure to pollution to the river.
Again, one of the requirements of the ordinances are a long list of chemicals that cannot be stored in a floodplain, correct?
That is correct.
And will Huntley will Huntley comply with that and not store any of the prohibited chemicals and materials?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for you, please. Since fracking is a 24/7, 365 operation, if you have flooding at your plant, you have to shut it down for extended period of time until you clean it up and get it operating. So then you would resort to truck trafficking because you need to put water, is that correct?
Yes.
So then we would put those few thousand trucks back on the highway, correct?
Which is allowable under the zoning approval that Huntley has already obtained. There were,
So regardless of a pump station, you already have approval to put trucks on the road.
correct. I mean, the whole idea of the pump station is to eliminate the need to do that, even though Huntley is permitted under the zoning approvals to truck all that.
Can I ask a question that may be off in a distance on this? Mr. Anthony asked a question earlier about relative to the amount of fracking water you use relative to how much. Is there any way to tell, give us an idea what that is? I'm more curious about that than anything.
Yeah, so it does vary by location.
If you want to identify it.
I'm Scott Kruger, contracted to Huntley & Huntley as water superintendent. So as for your produced water that does come from the well, it does vary by location. It varies north to south in the oil field play, shale play, is also east to west. So if I gave you a number, since we haven't done a well in that area yet, relative, it could be about 7%. Now, over the life of the well,
Say that again, if you would.
7% water load will come back.
We'll come back. 7%
Yeah.
of the water. You
7% does
you
come
use
back.
93% of the water, probably.
Yeah, 93 is gonna stay down in that formation. Now, over the life of the well, eventually, yeah, you're gonna get it all come back. Now, will it all come back to be hauled off? The answer is no, because some of it does come back through the pipeline. You're gram dehydration at, when we sell it to a residential, right, when the guest comes to a resident, it's already dehydrated at dehydration plant. So some of that water is carried through your pipelines.
So when deregulation kicked in 30 years ago, I guess we ended up with the water in our gas lines. No, I shouldn't have said that.
No.
Good.
Thank you. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Excuse me, I have a question. Okay, when you have your trucks delivering sand to your operation, your fracking operation, how do they get there?
They will come in through the bonded roads.
How many trucks of sand a day do you have coming in?
Trucks per sand per day,
Size?
depending on how many stages we would complete. So it's a typical semi truck. The payload on that, there's 40,000 pounds of sand that do come on each truck. Relative to how much, whatever our design is for that well, and that varies by what a completion engineer would put on that. You could roughly have eight trucks per well come in.
Okay,
8 per well. If we did, it's 8 per stage. If we did 4 stages, 6 stages in a day, it would be all relative to that. So if you had, a hypothetical, if you had 6 stages, 8 trucks, 48 trucks a day of sand would come to that location.
okay, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
you could have 50 trucks a day. So
That is
sand.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
That concludes our presentation.
Okay, we should discuss standing issues.
I have witnesses I can call to testify to standing. I do have a brief we've prepared. It's a brief we've previously submitted on standings raised for in Elizabeth Township by Mr. Lucas. But before I call any witnesses, let me get myself organized with my documents. So, can everybody who's here for Elizabeth Township, Protect Elizabeth Township, could they come up if they wanted to talk today? Sit in these first 2 rows. Thank you. So, before I call anybody, I just would note that per Elizabeth Township's ordinances, this proceeding today is governed by the Municipal Planning Code statute, statewide statute that governs proceeding standards. And sections 908, paragraph 3, and section 913.3 concern standing. Section 908, paragraph 3 says, parties to the hearing shall be the municipality, any person affected by the application who has made timely appearance of record before the board, and any other person, including civic or community organizations, permitted to appear by the board. The board shall have the power to require that all persons who wish to be considered parties enter appearances in writings on forms provided by the board. And section 913, it concerns appeals, but it does say appeals may be filed with the board in writing by the landowner affected, any officer or agency of the municipality, or any person aggrieved. So
I guess my question still remains is identify, for Protect Elizabeth to have legal standing, as much as, a senator from California or anybody else, you have to have, if you're an organization, you have to have members that are in close proximity to the proposed site and are going to be impacted by it. So my only question, before we even identify, necessarily have a whole bunch of people testify, is for Protect Elizabeth, just to identify the individuals who are their members and where they reside in relation to the facility. If they live clear on the other end of the township, they don't have standing, and if they don't have standing, Protect Elizabeth does.
Yeah, well, I mean, how about, before we go into that, I want to hear what Mr. Lucas has to say about 9083. It does say that the parties to the hearing shall be the municipality, any person affected by the application who's made timely appearance of resident, and any other person permitted to appear before the board.
That still requires compliance with long-standing customary case law on being what's called a person aggrieved. And just to read a passage from the Commonwealth Court, the state's law was to establish a aggrieved status of the person of standing. A party must have a substantial direct and immediate interest in the claim to be litigated. In order to have a substantial interest, there must be some discernible adverse effect to some interest other than the abstract interest of all citizens in having others comply with the law. The interest must be immediate and not of remote consequence of judgment. A person has standing where he has suffered or will suffer an injury in fact, and the interest he seeks to protect is arguably within the zone of interest sought to be protected or regulated by the statute or constitutional guarantee in question. And then it goes on to say basically an objector has to be within close proximity. That's my question. Who are the individuals here that protect Elizabeth that say they're represented?
Well, I think we're about to find out. And my interpretation of 9083 is that it's sort of circular because it says that a party is any other person or civic organization permitted to appear by the board.
But the case law is that those organizations can only have standing if they have individual members who have standing.
Cool. That's correct.
So, I mean, there may be other instances where Protect PTs represented somebody who lived right across from the well pad, and we didn't contest their standing, for example. Protect Elizabeth, excuse me. But here, I'm just asking the question, show me the bodies. Who are the individuals that Protect Elizabeth is claiming they're representing here? Where do they live in their own property in relationship to the proposed site?
I'm prepared to call this one.
Go ahead.
First person I call will be Lloyd Seiler.
Lloyd Zeiler, 235 Miss Road.
Mr. Seiler.
What's his name?
Lloyd Zeiler. L-O-Y-D Zeiler.
I-L-E-R.
That's right, D-E-I-L-E-R.
Were you sworn in earlier today?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler.
I own the property right next to the park. 3.9 acres. My property right close to 30.
So what's the address of the property?
It's a lot number, I don't remember.
Okay, and you're involved with Protect PT, what's the country? And how long have you been working with or involved with Protect PT?
I've been involved here and there from the very beginning.
And you're interested in three proceedings today concerning Huntley Energy's application for a floodplain variance?
Yes,
Okay, why is that?
because it directly affects my property.
And are you asking that the board hear your testimony today before they issue a decision today?
I'm sorry. Of course, yes.
So that's my first witness.
If I have a couple of questions. Now, where exactly is your property? Maybe if we take a,
And for the record, I'm gonna pull out C100 diagram. And you can go ahead and point where your property is.
The lot block number is 1414-S-6.
Okay, and it's your testimony today that your name is identified on this diagram?
That's correct.
Okay. And approximately how far, if you're able to answer, is your property line from the bike trail, the cat trail? Okay. So I would direct the board's attention, I could bring this closer.
Bring it close. Yeah, very good.
saying he joins the park and joins the bike trail.
Correct. His property is this one designated by Humphrey Humphrey's diagrams. What is that?
Where are the park holes? Eight acres.
Lot 3.9 acres, I believe it is.
3.9.
I have a question or two. Do you have any buildings on that property?
I had a chance to put my drink on here.
Do you anticipate Huntley and Humphrey's operations on this site will affect your use of property potentially? You're concerned about that?
I've lost sleep over it.
Say it again.
I've lost sleep over it.
Mr. Zeiler, if I understand correctly, your property versus is not developed at this point, correct?
At this point, okay.
And it's above the trail?
Yes.
Are you aware that your property is outside the floodplain?
Yes.
And so, explain to me, how the placement of the pump house is going to affect water in a way that would impact your property.
I don't think I finished my questioning first, so let me finish my standing question before I turn to Lucas, please.
Okay, I thought we had Lucas ask a question, but go ahead. Go ahead.
So you heard testimony, you've been present tonight for all of Huntley and Humphrey's presentations, is that correct?
Yes.
And you heard testimony concerning construction
Yes.
and vehicles,
Yes.
trucks on the roads? Okay, and even though you're not on the floodplain, you have concerns about the construction activities that will be passing by your property?
Yes, for sure.
Senator Lewis?
No further questions.
Okay, so are we expecting a decision from the board then on Mr. Zeiler's?
Yes, and I have additional witnesses, unless a determination is made, I don't have to call the additional witnesses for the purpose of standing if the board decides we do have standing, but I do have additional witnesses.
And did I hear Mr. Zeiler testify that he is a member of Protect Elizabeth Township?
Correct. It's 503 C Corporation, nonprofit located here in Elizabeth Township.
Mr. Zeiler, how long have you been a member?
We object to relevance. He's a member.
When did you become a member?
Where are you living?
Did you pay any dues?
It's not relevant. That assumes first of all that there are dues, and then even the answer to that question doesn't have any effect on the issue.
Yeah, I'm fine. Could the board have a short conference here before we go any further? Yeah, let's take a brief break. Can we do that? Yeah, I have it right here.
Full flex.
Yeah, this.
I have a kitchen table that's actually I want this. You know, I have a kitchen table.
There's a little one like this, something similar to this. On the place side too.
Does it work? That's cool as hell.
Oh man, we actually had it like all of this was ice.
Well,
It took, I don't know how long the frost.
yeah.
You want to sign up?
Well, they're drilling. They're drilling. They've been drilling now for I can see the water truck. You know, I guess we're short. I don't know. I think we'll sign up for that question about this, Thank you.
One pipeline, two pipelines. A week later, it went to a major modification. They added two pipelines, goes from Bumblebee to the county border. That's my other concern. Right now, there's one pipeline. They're digging a trench for what? These guys.
Right now, they have these special issues.
I only have 14 more years to go. So.
There you go. No.
Yeah, okay, we got everybody? Okay, I think the board has, well, you were gonna ask a couple more standing questions, weren't you?
Yeah.
Why don't you do that?
Mr. Ziegler? You indicated you're kind of just you apply for a building permit?
No.
Are you aware that you need to obtain conditional use approval to build a home in the RC district in which your property is located?
There's been houses here before.
Okay. My question is, are you aware
Being
of
asked
the
for a legal
procedure?
conclusion.
Are you aware of the procedure you need to go through to obtain approval to build a home on your property?
I'm gonna just call for a legal conclusion.
We'll allow the question, but I think that's gonna be a nice question. Go ahead.
Are you aware of what approvals you need from the township to build a home on the property you're talking about?
To an extent.
That's, I think, all right.
I just one or two other questions. Now your property is located between Whitetail Road and the trail, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the back part of the property is fairly steep, is that correct?
Not really.
In fact, hasn't there been a slide on the lower side of Whitetail Road across the back part of your property?
Yeah, the whole area is considered a slope zone.
Okay, where are we going with this?
The question is,
Right.
just one more question, sir. If you could come over and look at the exhibit, the OB1 exhibit, there's an area where the words Whitetail Road are placed. You see that?
Yeah.
And is that your property?
Yeah.
And the area underneath there that's a lighter shade, that's the area of the slide, is that correct? Okay, thank you. No further questions. I would just like to reiterate, I mean, this isn't the conditional use here, and this individual standing may be a lot different in that context. But here, the narrow issue the board is addressing is the floodplain issue. And the purpose of the floodplain ordinance, section 201, is to encourage the utilization of appropriate construction practices in order to prevent or minimize flood damage in the future, minimize danger to public health by protecting water supply and natural drainage, and reduce financial burdens imposed on the community, its governmental units, and its residents by preventing excessive development in areas subject to flooding. This board's decision relates to those issues, none of which impact this gentleman's property.
I would respond that we've heard testimony today concerning ambient noise of nearby residents. We've heard testimony concerning trucks that may or may not be on the property, depending on this variance being granted near the property. We've heard testimony about digging that would be done, pipelines that would be done near Mr. Zyle's property. He has a right to participate in this board, or before this board today, given the broad standing guidelines that courts in Pennsylvania and the statute outlines.
It is a close question, but the sense of the board is that Mr. Zeiler has shown enough of a connection to the property to establish standing to be a party before the board, and because he is a member of Protect Elizabeth Township, that imparts to Protect Elizabeth Township the right to ask questions. All we're saying is that Zeiler and Protect Elizabeth Township can be parties for the purpose of cross-examining the person representing.
I call Ryan Daly. And for the record, I apologize. My name is Anton Berkovich. I work for Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services, and we represent Protect EOP. Mr. Daly, is your mic on?
Yes.
So you gave testimony today concerning Huntley and Huntley Energy's application today for a variance concerning the township's floodplain ordinance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you prepared and testified about a memo that was included and presented today, drafted by CEC for Huntley and Huntley, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that memo was attached to a larger document titled floodplain variance application, also labeled by CDC, correct?
Yes.
Did you draft the larger memo?
I oversaw drafting of it, yes.
Okay, you reviewed it and you're familiar with it?
Yes.
You're able to testify to the contents of the larger memo?
Yes.
And so you testified that you were seeking a variance from the requirements that are in Chapter 8 of the Elizabeth Township's ordinance, correct?
Chapter 8 being the floodplain ordinance. Yes.
And are you able to testify today what subsections you're specifically seeking a variance from?
That I do not know specifically.
Okay, so you'd agree with me that there's a number of sections with different titles, and they outline different requirements for, to develop in the floodplain.
Yes.
And you're not able to tell the board which specific sections you're requesting Huntley and Huntley be exempted from, and which ones they are not exempted from.
I mean, our narrative document kind of laid out the different elements of the ordinance. Yeah, so I believe the next page.
But you'd agree with me that it would be much more straightforward and simple if Huntley and Huntley could simply state which ordinance sections their alleged position would be a hardship to be in compliance with.
Well, so I think, my understanding has been any sort of development within the floodplain requires approval from this board, and by nature, this facility needs to be located in close proximity to the river, otherwise it doesn't function, so.
And has there been any, has Huntley and Huntley, if you know, has Huntley and Huntley informed any adjacent municipalities of their intention to develop in the floodplain?
That I do not know.
And are you able to tell me how long you anticipate construction of the pump station will take?
So construction of the intake structure and the pump station is approximately like 2 months.
And that can't begin until other permits that you referred to today are obtained from other departments?
That's correct.
Okay. And one of the benefits Huntley and Huntley cited for this pump station would be reducing truck traffic. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And now, when you say truck traffic, you mean Huntley and Huntley's truck traffic?
So meaning water delivery to their well sites during their completion operations.
So you'd agree with me that you're seeking a variance to reduce a condition that Huntley and Huntley created themselves?
I mean, they already got approval through the board for construction of the well pads and drilling and completion of the well site. So the truck traffic is already been approved. This variance would be to take trucks off of the township roads.
And reducing noise is another benefit. That's the noise that Huntley and Huntley is generating. Is that correct? Their operations are generating.
This, I don't believe, would have any reduction on any other noise. I'm not sure what you're referring to there
Was
specifically.
there an ambient noise study conducted as part of this application?
Yes.
Okay, and would it be fair to say, as part of that study, base levels prior to any development were measured?
Yes.
Okay, and what is, and you already testified, I believe, to this, but what was Huntley and Huntley's conclusion from this noise ambient study?
So the ambient study that Acoustical Control completed showed ambient decibel levels in the park of roughly 54 decibels.
That's what exists as of now.
Correct, with no development.
Okay, and what's the anticipated change from development?
So the sound impact assessment, and I should preface this that I'm not a sound engineer. I have communicated with the sound engineer that prepared the sound impact assessment. So my understanding is when they ran the model with the 2 pumps running within the pump station, the sound levels at the nearest receptor are approximately like 30 decibels, which is significantly lower than the ambient noise.
Would this be measured from where the ambient noise was measured to, same spot?
Similar, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where the meter was set up, but it was located in the park.
Did you review the study? The sound?
I have seen it, not a detailed review.
Would you agree with me that the ambience monitoring was at the nearest residential property to the pump station's proposed site?
Without looking, I couldn't say to that.
Okay. And you're not aware whether any noise ambient study was done in relation to distance from the trail, from where park goers would be hearing the noise?
I don't recall if that was located as a receptor or not. But I believe
You think that's something that should be?
I mean, again, I think if I recall, the nearest house or nearest receptor is closer than the trail, if I recall.
Sure.
I mean, I have to verify on.
And you said that once during the completion stage of gas retrieval, the pump will be running 24/7,
Yes,
not be generating noise.
correct. But again, the noise levels were very low. The nature of
It's measured to the nearest house, nearest residence.
correct. But again, I think within the park they were low too. I don't remember what the exact number.
I will note again, we touched on this with the Laura issue for the commissioners, but in addition, the study was done in accordance with township ordinance, which says take an ambient near the closest house and then project decibel levels at any nearby homes, basically. So that's the ordinance requirement.
That's what, so answer my question is finished for testimony from council center.
Go ahead, I think he was trying to clarify.
Well, sure, he has that opportunity.
Yeah.
I
Well, go ahead.
didn't interrupt his proceedings.
Okay.
Questioning.
Go ahead.
Okay. Which permits in relation to the floodplain, or the pump station, which permits are still pending?
So the ECGP 3 from the DEP has been approved. That allows the
I'm asking pending
pending.
permits.
Okay, so the GP4, which allows construction of the intake facility, is pending. The last communication we've had with the DEP, they're in their final review of that. As far as municipal permits, as you're aware, the conditional use application is under review. The planning commission recommended that for approval to the board, so that'll be on the meeting next month. We also have a building permit that will be submitted and also a grading permit.
To be submitted
Yes, they've not been submitted yet.
to,
The township.
and did DEP get a anticipated date of approval for the GP4?
They have not.
And anticipated date to submit building permit?
We don't have that yet, but I would assume the next 2 weeks.
And graded permit, same thing?
Same thing, it would be concurrent with the building permit.
And did you testify you're seeking to begin construction in mid-April?
Assuming all approvals are in place, that would be the intent.
And the application documents, I'm asking for clarification, application documents submitted in advance for today, reference 3 pumps, correct?
3 pumps were shown, yes.
Yeah, but today, the testimony, the oral testimony today was 2 pumps that are being planned.
Correct.
Are you requesting approval for 3 pumps potentially, or are you asking for approval for 2?
I'm not aware of how the number of pumps relates for this application because the building size, I think, is what.
Is it possible that Huntley will end up needing 3 pumps for this station?
No, I mean, they started with 3 pumps and they've removed 1 as they've, further evaluated the system.
Our application is amended, is for 2 pumps. Just so it's clear.
questioning for another person here, you can let me know, but are you able to testify about the different classifications between W1, W2, and W4?
That's for Mr. Shimko.
I have a question about language used. If you're okay, I'll just go ahead and show it to you. Page 6 of your application, subparagraph 4, you can see I underlined a sentence drafted. The purpose of the project is to withdraw water from the Yawk River, which precludes the elimination of all work within 50 feet of the Yawk River. Can you explain that? What that means?
Can I read the rest of the response? We're not taking it out of context. Yeah, so the ordinance requirement that we're responding to there, if you look at the italics part before, says, within any identified floodplain area, no new construction or development shall be located within the area measured 50 feet landward from the top of bank of any water course. Our response to that was, by nature, this facility needs to include construction to the river. Otherwise, like, there's no way to get water to the pump house. The pump house itself is located farther than 50 feet away from the top of bank of the river.
Do you So, would you agree with me that for the board's assistance and for the public, Elizabeth Township's public's assistance, instead of writing, which precludes the elimination of all work within 50 feet of the Yawk River, it would have been better to simply write, we're seeking a variance from this provision?
I'm going to object that that presupposes that a variance is needed, and one looks at the definition of new construction under the floodplain ordinance refers to structures, and structures that are then in turn defined as a walled and roof building, including a gas or liquid storage tank that is principally above ground, as well as a manufactured home. Nothing we are proposing is a structure, and therefore not new construction, and therefore the activity that's going to take place within 50 feet isn't subject to that limitation.
I would just note my response, that's not an objection under the rules of evidence, and he's testifying, so.
Well, I think you're sort of testifying to it, that you're making a comment that that's not the right way to word it. If you want to ask the question again, then he can answer it, but I don't see how relevant it is to the application.
All right, I'll move on. Okay. Turning page 8, following the rest of this document, you have the ordinance in italics and a response in bold. And so my assumption is you're responding in response to section 502 right here, do you see?
Yes.
And then a little bit on the next page, on page 8, there's subparagraph 4. I'll go ahead and read it, and you can read it if you like. The design and construction standards and specifications contained in the 2009 International Building Code and in the 2009 International Residential Code, or the most recent revisions thereof, and ASCE 24 and 34 PA Code, chapters 401 through 405 as amended, shall be utilized where they are more restricted. And so that subsection is in regards to non-residential structures, correct?
Yes.
Okay, there's no response in the application copy I have. Is there a reason for that?
That I'm not sure. I think Mr. Shimko can probably speak to the IBC codes.
But you'd agree with me that the document submitted to the board, there's nothing in there?
There's not appear to be a response
All
there.
right. Page 10, subs, ordinance 503, subparagraph G. All buildings and structures shall be designed, located, and constructed so as to offer the minimum obstruction to the flow of water, and shall be designed to have a minimum effect upon the flow and height of floodwater. And then your response, the building location offers minimal, if any, impact of flow and height. How is that determination made?
Basically based on the small amount of area that we're occupying within the floodplain, and also being located outside of the FEMA delineated floodway.
So no calculations were made, it's an assumption?
We did not perform an H&H analysis, no.
Is there a reason why the analysis wasn't performed?
It didn't seem necessary given the small footprint of the building.
But you can't determine the footprint, or you can't determine the impact, the exact impact on this water without doing this analysis, is that correct?
When you say exact, you mean like decimal places of
A number.
a number? I cannot give exact number. I can say that based on the definition of floodplain and floodway, that the FEMA study has determined that if you were to block off the entire floodplain, or the floodway fringe, that the area within the floodway, there would be no more than a 1 foot increase in the water surface elevation. The floodway fringe in this area is approximately 370 feet wide. Our building is occupying less than 10% of that area.
Has FEMA been notified about this proposed project?
I don't believe so, and I don't believe they're required to because we're outside of the floodway.
That's all the questions I have.
All right.
Tender ordinance.
Right, approximately how far upstream from the pump house is the nearest house?
It's a little over 400 feet.
And approximately how far downstream from the pump house is the nearest
It's
house?
like 3,700 feet, I believe.
About 3/4 of a mile.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, you testified, the testimony that the footprint of the proposed Huntley pump station is 640 square feet.
Yes.
Was, did the board previously approve last year a floodplain variance for a house immediately upstream from the Huntley facility?
Yes.
And what was the size of that, square footage of that building?
That I don't remember, but I know it was larger than the pump station is.
Thank you.
board's permission, at this time, I'd ask that any Elizabeth Township residents here for Protect ET that have prepared statements to read to the board be offered to do so. I don't need to question them. I would just ask it. What's that? I don't believe so.
It would be good if we have copies of them, besides reading them in the record.
Best way to, I mean, I could maybe submit copies in the future, like in the next couple of days, but original copies, I mean, that's,
Oh, they're just making them on the spot?
well, they have written copies, but I don't want to submit the originals and not have.
No, no, we don't need that.
If there's a copy
Yeah,
of the
just-
building.
Were they gonna speak and read them now?
I think they're just gonna read their statements.
Well, subject to objections, you know,
Oh,
specific
obviously.
objections. I'm gonna object to them generically to the reading statement.
Sure.
They cross the line and surely I'll note that.
Okay. Okay.
So, anybody here who's from Protect ET, if you want to get a statement on the record, your chance to do so.
I just told her.
Yeah, let's see. Are any of these, the board was going to try, before this thing out, to limit anybody's individual comment to 3 minutes. It doesn't look like any of these are longer than that.
I don't think it's 33 minutes.
Let's go ahead. It gets long, won't you?
The other question is, anyone you have speaking, are they going to speak in public comment?
In addition to this.
As, you mean a future date?
No, tonight.
Tonight?
Oh, that's separate from Protect ET?
Yes.
All, that's their own decision to make individually.
Okay, well, let's hear views.
I mean, mine's
Go ahead.
for both, so I won't be speaking twice.
Excellent.
The same thing that I'm saying.
Good, go ahead.
All right, Lloyd's Island, 235 Worcester Road, again, my property that I own is right above this port, right above the port that's proposed.
Can you speak into the mic?
Yeah, a little bit closer.
That's right. Yeah, Lloyd's Island, 235 Worcester Road, being listed there. And my property that I own is right above this proposed station. Okay. My property is directly above Blydell Park, and I'd like to remind this board that I was denied to build storage units on my property that was a compatible use for this area. At that time, when I applied, not one person was there in opposition, not one. My property is not even in the floodplain, and my storage units would have only been considered light commercial at most, with no noise and no pollution whatsoever. This pump station is for industrial purposes in a flood zone, in a park, by a neighborhood, and next to the bike trail. This piece of equipment will help further pollute potential drinking water, air, and disrupt the climate by pushing the process now referred to as fracking. In my view, not one drop of water should be allowed to be used in this extreme extraction process. To keep polluting potential drinking water is immoral, if not criminal. Our streams and rivers have been subjected to flowback, and these brines that come back from these operations are extremely radioactive. You see, radium and radon are extremely water soluble, and since radium and radon are among the most radiotoxic substances existing, causing lung and bone cancer at relatively low concentrations, special attention must be devoted to their appearance in nature. My worry, and for others as well, is that we are starting to see cancer clusters in heavily fracked areas. A clear example of this is from Washington County concerning a rare cancer called Ewing's sarcoma, which attacks the bone. Is this part of the reason why the Attorney General is investigating environmental crimes committed by this industry? New York, Vermont, Maryland have all banned these new unconventional wells. Florida is in the works to ban as well, and the latest 10-year moratorium in Oregon all point in the same direction. This process should be stopped. At this point, ask yourself, where does your drinking water come from? Please deny this application. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say something. My name is Thomas Over. I live at 1614 Beachview Street, Wide Up.
We're not into public yet. We still.
He's part of that.
He's I'm speaking for both, for myself and for.
Are you a member?
Yeah, as of tonight, in case you have a question.
And what's your name, Thomas?
Thomas Over. I live less than 500 feet from where this is going. My kids play in that park. They do every summer. My dogs run in that park. Our streets are sinking down there. This is not the place to put this. Like, it's gonna completely disrupt our community and disrupt my family this summer. Kids fly kites down there. I mean, it's a family town. It's not someplace to be pump house in. This is ridiculous, more or less. We know this is probably gonna happen already, but it's gonna affect people that live down there. And I'm one of those people, and I don't want it. That's all I have. OHLER.
I don't have any additional witnesses. The only thing remaining that I'd ask is to put argument on the record.
Well, is there anybody, before we do that, are there any general comments? I think we may have a couple. Rather than specific statements, just general comments on the sunshine.
My name is Carolyn Aaron, and I live at 1601 Parkview Street. And my house is really right across from where it said, little house.
How do you spell your last name?
EHRIN. And personally, when they keep saying about the noise, I have been at a relative's place where they had a pump station close to their house. And when I mean close, about where I would be at. And their complaint all the time is the humming constant. And I know myself, I get very annoyed with a lot of noise. And when they said that the decimal was 50 in that park, just side, I don't know how they got 50. But you put 30 on top of that, that's 80. Guess what I'm gonna be dealing with 24 hours a day? So I really am very concerned about that. As far as the roads go, all the roads in Elizabeth Township are falling apart, but I live on a bend, which I've been trying to take care of this lot forever. When they go past this, there's gonna be complications when they bring in all this stuff to the park, okay? And then, as far as the park goes, it's not gonna be nice for any of the bike trail people to come down and sit there, because it's gonna be noisy, absolutely noisy. Again, I'm just concerned for the noise, the children, and as far as flood zone, again, I don't understand how FEMA could not be notified of this, because it should be built up to flood specs. Everybody else has to do it, why not a corporation? And I have many, many variances, so it's not like I don't plan on doing any more stuff, but I go through the proper channels just like everybody else. So I would expect this corporation to go by FEMA specs too. All right, thank you.
You're gonna have to bear with me on last names, because I'm very bad at pronouncing, okay? There's a Russell, there's a Dyson.
Like Russell Vermanick.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Russell Urbanek, that's V as in Victory, E-R-B-A-N-E-C. I live at 325 High Street, Elizabeth, PA, 15037. I'd just like to say that I'm in favor of this variance. It's gonna take, thousands of truck trips off the road. Yeah, I know there's gonna be construction at the intake area for a couple months, but once that's done, it's over. But the fracking is gonna happen over a number of years. And when each well is fracked, there's gonna be a lot of trucks. And this is one way to reduce that impact on the entire township. And I think that's gonna be a lot better for the township, because the way it is now, they have permission to run the trucks. And if they have to, they will do it. So, and on the noise level, decibels doesn't work. You don't add 30 to 50. It's a log scale. So a decibel level of 30 is 2 orders of magnitude lower than the noise level of 54 decibels. So it's just a very slight increase in the noise level there. So, thank you.
So how do they know? Okay, Lloyd? Ellen? He said he's not gonna speak. Yeah. Otto?
He already spoke.
Pardon me?
He already spoke. Over?
Yeah.
Yes, he already spoke.
Mary, Kosha?
Ari Kusher from 472 Boston Harbor Road. I had just a couple of comments. First of all, I think they've answered many of my questions. My concern is the schedule that they've set up. They told me these size pumps, but I sized them, and I'm not sure if you sized them. There's delivery problems with the pumps, not only where you're gonna put this building, so it's critical if they're talking about a 2-month schedule, they get going. But on the other side of the coin is, there's problems perhaps where their pads are, open tanks up there. In the wintertime, do you operate and do fracking? If you got open tanks like a swimming pool, and now you're coming out of the river and flotation and icebergs, but it doesn't matter, I guess you could stop. But when you do all your timing, I try to do some process analysis here with minimal information, but all these things that you're trying to do over a period of time, have you taken into consideration the downtime? When you size these tanks and pumps, and you're trying to produce so much, I see nothing in your books, which I spent 3.5 hours looking through, that shows much on process, much on how much you're saving by not using trucks or using this tank, and what's the help. I did study the ordinance on floodplain. That is really a difficult ordinance to pass in any circumstance. I mean, you're trying hard, and I hope you cover it all, but in my short amount of time, just to try to live with that is pretty difficult. But in general, the progress of doing this is probably to benefit people, but on the other hand, have you taken into consideration the time element from a process standpoint and how much delay? 2 months to build this, have you even put the spec together for a pump? What's the status of the pumps? Have you sized it, and are you ready to move to go get a pump built, and how long does it take? Real world, do you really have that? Can you give an answer to me, please?
We'll be happy, this is public comment at this point, we'll be happy to respond to you.
Okay, well, they've done it, so the homework from the standpoint of looking at this was to try to understand what's going on, not completely, but enough to feel comfortable. And I think they've answered most of my questions. And so, from a standpoint of following the procedures, it's up to you guys. Thank you.
Okay, Elmer? Art?
Amos.
You know my name by now. Hey, anyway, this doesn't have anything to do with this, but I see all the members here are in attendance of this board. You got 2 alternates. And this has happened in the past. Mr. Burry was allowed to ask questions and speak and direct questions to the people here. In the past, since they're alternates and everybody's here, they were not allowed to speak. I want all his comments stricken from the record.
Well, you certainly don't.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of the alternates being barred from participating in the past.
Wait, if he wants to speak and everybody's here, he should be in the audience and sign up, not act like a board member. He's not a board member because they're all in attendance.
The board knows who's a member.
Right, okay, and they're an alternate if somebody's missing.
Yeah.
And wait a minute, in the past, they were not allowed to speak. It's happened here. There's a person in this room that knows that. She tried to do it. But anyway, I'm going to move on. All his remarks should be stricken from the record, is what I'm saying. Everything attached to it. Since December 2011, we've had a dysfunctional government in this township. Nothing is being done, nothing is being completed. It just keeps moving on. All we have is legal issues, lawsuits, everything, hiring all new engineers continuously. Nothing gets done. This township is going backwards. These variances need to be passed. This needs to be done and taken care of. And it's financially beneficial to the township, the school district, and individuals that own the property and have leases with the gas company. It's beneficial to a lot of people. If you don't pass this, you're trying to deny all this. The township and the school district already have had financial gains from this industry. And the last thing I want to say, I live on Route 48, and if anybody wants to talk about noise and pollution, move down to my house or Mr. Kosh's house. This is ridiculous what they're saying about pollution and noise from this facility. Pennsylvania American Water has huge pumping stations down on Beck's Run. You can't hear them. You drive out there, you don't hear nothing. I mean, they're used for intake for the water to supply Pennsylvania American Water. You know, this is ridiculous what these people are using as claims to deny this. I want this board unanimously approve these variances. Thank you.
I was late starting the timer, trying to let you know. Ted Grice.
Ted Grice, 1645 Scenery Drive. The criterion for granting a variance with the PA zoning variance MPC says that there has to be unique physical circumstances or physical conditions peculiar to the property. Because of such circumstances, there is no possibility to develop in conformity with the provisions of the zoning ordinance, and that hardship was not created by the applicant. But hardship is being created by the applicant because there are other sources of water that can be used besides just this pump station. There are other methods that can be used. They're creating this. If the variance is authorized, it will not alter the essential characteristic of the neighborhood where the property is located, nor substantially impair appropriate use or development of adjacent property, nor be detrimental to the public welfare. I go down the river quite frequently on kayaks, and I'm going to have to now have a place that has 50 feet out with buoys and everything else, and there's low water areas that I have to pick up my kayak to be able to move it anyway, and now I'm going to have water flow that's being reduced from the river. That is going to affect me. Then the fifth one says if the variance is authorized, it will be the minimum variance that will afford relief and represent the least modification possible of the regulation in issue. But there is no need for this pump station to be lasting 15 years, and then they're having the ability to renew that lease for another set number of times, but right now there's not even a number in there. There are several different reasons why this should be denied, all based upon the MPC and the reasons for granting the variance. if you go through the numbers at the beginning, I was asking myself, what is the level that this is being drained from? How deep is that drain pipe going out, that 50 feet? How much is the flow rate? Where is this flow rate's been taken from? I still don't know really where that is. How long is the pump station going to be in operation? Well, what I found out is this. There are 15 wells, 6 will be done this year. That means there's 9 left. So if 6 are going to be done this year and 9 are left, we don't need 15 more years of this pump station to be in operation to take care of that. This is in play for 15 years and renewable by them. Kim Price says only Plutus and Cedo Pad are ones permitted, but would like to use it elsewhere, but Plutus and Cedo are the only ones that have permits. And the opening line from Lane Lucas that is on the record says the following: this is for township and surrounding area use. Clearly that's his opening statement from what this is. This is not just a township use. This 15 years is to take care of other townships and other municipalities, and it is not taking care of the people who are affected this in the neighborhoods that this is going into. This is an agreement that helps them. They don't pay any money. Well, there's a way that they can go ahead and do this without you granting this, and that is water from PA American could be used to fill the Cedo Pad across those many months that it would take normally to build the pump station, and then the water could be withdrawn from that extra flow that's been pumped in from PA American water. So you fill up the Cedo Pad with PA American water and use the water as you go, and then you're getting the daily input plus previous input from before, and you don't need this to be passed at all.
Patty Hoffman, 408 Duncan Station Road. It's P-A-T-T-Y. Okay, we keep putting the cart before the horse every time we go and do anything that has to do with Huntley and Huntley. We've been through the planning, we've been through commissioners, we've been through this over and over again. Every time we go somewhere, they change what they're doing and they make something else. We were told we were gonna have water only coming from PA water. Well, now we have to have a pump station, we have to have trucks. Excuse me. The trucks are not just gonna be the trucks from water that are coming in though. Those trucks are also going to be sand trucks and wastewater trucks and everything else that are going to be in and out. So they make it like the only thing that's coming in here that we need to remedy is the water trucks. So now all of a sudden we have to have a spot that is down by the river that is a recreational piece of property. That recreational piece of property is something that we're not supposed to talk about, but guess what? That recreational piece of property should not be used for this because it was not bought for this, it was bought with a grant. So I don't see those permits in place. They're not here. And they didn't talk about those permits when they were asked about the permits that are absent. How can you do this? It's a federal grant. It's perpetuity that stays recreation. So now we're going to take this and we're going to say it's okay because the commissioner said it was okay. And we're going to say that planning said it was okay. Well, planning really didn't want to pass this on at the last meeting. They really wanted to have some questions and ask some stuff. We never got to those issues because Huntley and Huntley stood up and told us that we had to have this and it had to move forward, so they had to make a decision that night. Down in where we're talking about right now, it is a flood zone. And the people that live down there, that live around that park, know it's a flood zone. They know their roads are caving in. The park that's down there, we were supposed to have a new playground put in. We had a grant that we were working on to try to get a playground to go in down there. We couldn't bring big trucks in down there. The road crew couldn't figure out how to get the trucks down there. And they said, well, I guess we'll have to figure it out when we have to have this great big playground come in on a big truck. So we have another grant right now that was supposed to have a playground go in this summer. What about that playground? That happens to be within their little section of you cannot go there because where the playground was going to go was right in behind the right there in the park in the pavilion. So what are we going to do with that playground? We're going to work on the playground where they're trying to build this. We're going to have the trail people on the trail that are going to be misplaced. We're going to have the people that on that dirt road. The only way in and out of that, if you've ever been down there for their work, is to go down through single lane streets basically. You can't get past with 2 cars, but yet we're going to bring construction vehicles in there, and that's going to be their way in and out on a constant basis. And if it floods and those roads are torn up because of them, what about those people? You don't care about them? We just go from like this part of the township doesn't count today, this part of the township doesn't count tomorrow. We can't keep saying that every part of this township doesn't count. They all count. Thank you.
I didn't have a chance to sign the recommend later, I'd like to speak.
Just give and spell your name.
Sure. I'm Fred Bickerton, that's Vickerton. You know, Mr. Lucas, every time he comes up, you know, you gotta have standing. I'm sorry, I believe everybody in the township has standing on this. This is a public park. I use this park. You're saying I don't have any right because I don't live alongside the park that I use? Is that right? This property is a public property with deed restriction. When the township got it, it says it's from the federal government for recreational use only. So we're gonna put a pumping station in the middle of the park. We're gonna have our kids playing around this pump station. You know, our engineer came up with an idea that they should do a little better job on their electrical work. You know, he's right. It's a park. We're gonna have kids around it. We need all the protection on that electrical system we can have. But, oh, we don't have to do that because somebody said, because somebody's told them it's all okay, they don't need it. They didn't look, that person didn't know that this was a park. You know, they're gonna be taking water out of the river. Did anybody do a study? Kids are swimming in that river all the time. Is there a danger to kids swimming around this intake? You're the expert on that. Those are questions that should have been answered.
Bill?
Bill Piper, 714 Clark Street. I'm just going to tell a quick story. On the seacoast of England, the police were worried about their perception in the town. So, in all the elementary schools, they handed out papers. They said, please fill them out. What do you think of our police department? Well, they got the responses back, and they noticed one paper, a little boy wrote, "Police is bastards." And they thought, well, our perception's pretty bad. We better put on some presentations. We better put on some assemblies. And they did. And after they were done, they handed out the forms again, and they said, well, now what do you think about the police? And lo and behold, the little boy wrote, "Police is clever bastards."
I think we have some.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Lord, L-O-R-D, as in David, 1736 Sahara Street in Blydale. Until recently, Blydale was gentrified. And though we love the efforts of trying to build our township into a prosperous community, Blydale is just regenerating new families. We have young parents with kids. Now, I'm not against commerce. I'm not against making money. But if we learned anything from what Carnegie and Frick did to this area, we are repeating it again. We need to take into account the safety of the people. No matter how much money you make, it still comes down to people. These young parents are down there. The Blydale ball field, which the WMBU owns, they locked it off. It's padlocked against anybody from the town because it's rented out to this Little League venture. So our children are either playing on the streets or they go down to the park. The hills down there, the old slag dumps, the bone pile cut from the old coking operations that was in Blydale. The kids have their little mountain bikes. They run those. Again, I'm not against Huntley and Huntley making money for themselves, and I'm not against for them creating jobs. Jobs is a wonderful thing, but somewhere, folks, we have to strike a balance between prosperity and happiness of a family and kids growing, and the prosperity of the overall venture being the township. So I see both sides, but what I'm asking is, please give consideration that we are rebounding as a town, Blythedale, with young parents and kids. Don't subject them to this energy. I mean, we live down here. We know what happened, the dangers of the river. So that's all I have to say.
Before I close, I'd like to make one comment since the conduct of the board was called into question. Section 903 of the municipalities plan provides that any alternate may participate in any proceeding or discussion of the board, but shall not be entitled to vote unless seated as the board can either vote now or just close the hearing. We'll take a minute. Yeah. It's adjourned again for a few 5 minutes.
Nice talk, thank you.
I think you can participate.
Oh, I have no idea.
Anyway, I'm gonna ask for a motion on the floor for the floodplain. This motion is just for the building on the floodplain. We have no jurisdiction on anything else. So is there a motion?
I so move.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Question on the motion. I have a question relative to the maintenance and under our requirements here, I believe we have to address the nuisance, if there is any nuisance, relative to the maintenance of that facility. Do you have any plans that we could put in our approval of this, and we could address that? The fact that what I'm really talking about, it's a recreation area, that's park. If the park wasn't there, I would bring this up. But the park's there, there's children there, they're gonna be there playing. Sure, we want to be responsible when they're getting hit by your maintenance truck coming in and out. Not your practice trucks, I'm not talking about the big, I'm just talking about your routine maintenance. I would like that to be addressed.
Well, we really didn't get into that, but, we talking about after the facility's up and running.
That's correct.
And to speak real briefly as to what we would expect in traffic.
So your traffic during the frac will be in and out of there a couple times a day. It will just be with the pickup truck or passenger vehicle.
But I would expect that when you have some way to do that flagman, make sure that there's no injuries to any of the children playing there. You know, that community, that little village of kids, one gentleman mentioned that it's starting to develop.
Yeah, we could send 2 people in and flag through the park, through that stone road or whatever.
We would put that as part of our approval, our acceptance of it.
Yes.
Is that, no, wait a minute, let's, I want to clarify something. Are we going to make that a condition of the?
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
Let's, okay, so. Yes, that's right. Terry, you make a motion? Do you have any problem? Okay, so the motion is to approve a floodplain variance subject to adding a flagman and routine maintenance of pump station.
Consistent with what Teresa he defined as our responsibility of our board, yes.
We will provide like a spotter, if you will, right, to spot that vehicle in and out. For the safety of the kids.
It gives us the assurance that we're not losing a child here in the process of what we're trying to do.
Or anybody, yes.
Or anybody, very
That's
good.
right.
Is there, I think we're still, are we still waiting for a second?
No, second.
Okay, who's second? Then we can vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You want a roll call? Anybody have a roll call need? Nays, we'll have a roll call. Okay.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Boda?
Yes.
Mr. Over?
Yes.
Mr. Anthony?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes. Motion is adjourned. Second.
Second.
Someone already has a place there that they
We got brilliant people running this thing.
So you're using the same footprint, so you should get that and say whatever that's called. Yeah, no, They
Yeah, well, who's gonna go,